Welcome to Azeroth United, a weekly podcast about World of Warcraft. My name is Denethar, and I am your host.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Today is Tuesday, August 6th, and this is episode 47 of Azeroth United. We have a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be covering all of the World of Warcraft news for both Modern and Classic WoW, as well as a discussion on what the gameplay loop for the War Within is going to look like for the average player. So pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and enjoy. And as always, if you have any questions or comments about the podcast, or if you have a particular topic that you would like to hear discussed, please email us at azerothunitedpod@gmail.com. Also, if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That helps out our distribution tremendously, so if you're inclined to do so, we would be very grateful. Before I get to the news, we'll do a quick rundown of what I got up to last week in World of Warcraft. Pretty much the entirety of last week was Radiant Echoes. I got a bunch of different alts that I was running through there. So I started with my level 70 characters who were lower geared. The Season 2 characters, the characters who were item level 402 or 405 or whatever. So I started running those characters through. And then I saw a thing that I guess you could get some different drops if you were getting lower level rewards. Basically, if you're not level 70 and you get an item, it could be a really cool transmog that you can't get any other way. So I started running my lower level characters through. I've got so many alts on so many different servers. Every time I was like, I'm going to change servers. I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to create a brand new life for myself on a new server. And so I'd make 2 or 3 characters over there and get them level 20 or 30 or whatever. And then be like, yeah, we're done with that. That's over. So yeah, I've got characters on RP servers. I've got characters on servers that were once back in the day PvP servers. I've got horde characters. I mean, I've got stuff all over the place. All of my unfinished thoughts and projects culminating in the Radiant Echoes event and all coming together. I have so many level 70 characters this time. In the past, I've never had this many, and so it's a little weird because it's like, well, do I run this event on a 3rd warrior? Do I run it on a 4th druid? I mean, what am I doing here? So I mean, yes, I ran the event many times. I really like the changes. So if you haven't done the event since it was launched, the changes that Blizzard made last weekend were phenomenal. The event is great now because you go in, whatever the zone is, you can go into the zone, and it just cycles between, all right, you're going to go through and cleanse the memories. And then as soon as you get the bar down to 0, the boss spawns. You go kill the boss, and you go back and you cleanse more memories. Now, Blizzard also just nerfed the amount of health on these bosses because they have a load time, basically. So as soon as your memory goes away and the boss spawns, you go, oh, I need to get to the boss. You got plenty of time. So as long as you're not lollygagging, you're fine. You can get over there. You kill the boss. You maybe turn in your quest if you haven't turned it in already. And then you go back to cleansing memories. So if you're just grinding currency, it's great. If you are leveling up an alt, it's so fast. I've seen reports of people doing level 60 to 70 in 45 minutes, which is completely reasonable because as soon as you get out there and you're cleansing these memories out, if you're strong enough to take the hits, you can burn through it so fast. So especially if you're if there's a lot of people around and you can just spam AoE spells, put dots on everything, whatever you got to do. If you're looking to level up some alts, now is the time to do it. So I don't have anyone that I've gotten to 70 yet because I've just been spreading the love. I'll be like, I'll do a couple on this character and I'll do a couple on that character, and I don't have anyone that. Honestly, I'm not dying to level anyone to 70 right now. I'm not trying to get to cap on anyone because it doesn't really matter. Whatever character I get to level 70, they're just going to sit there throughout most of the War Within. Like I have my second mage who up until a few hours ago was level 70, or I'm sorry, was level 60. And this is a character that I've had since vanilla. And he always gets leveled up late. So I think I finally got him to level 80 in Wrath. But before then, he had never been max level. And And I kind of leveled him up here and there every now and then. Every expansion or so, I'd level him up. But I've talked before about how my characters have personalities. And he's my nerdiest character. He's really nerdy. He's awkward. He doesn't know how to interact with people. Most people, when they play their character, are like, my character is so cool. My character is such a badass. When I play Percy the Mage, he's the nerdiest guy on the planet. Literally. And he's even nerdier than that guy in Researchers Under Fire, right? You know who I'm talking about. You know the guy I'm talking about. He's nerdier than that guy. So he doesn't have glasses, though. Maybe I need to give him some glasses. Anyway, so I got a couple levels on him. But, he's been sitting there at level 60 for the entirety of Dragonflight. Just sitting there, doing nothing. I leveled him up to 60 at the end of Shadowlands before Dragonflight came out, the Dragonflight pre-patch event. So I'm just going to do the same thing again. I'll get him to 70, and he'll sit for probably the entirety of the War Within and not do anything, and that's just how it is. So yeah, when you're a certified altaholic like I am, that's what you do. You have the character, you don't want to get rid of them because it's like, well, the character means something to me. But does he really mean something when you never actually play the character? I mean, I'm just saying. So I don't know. Anyway, anytime I made a mage in Classic, I tried to get Percy as a name because it's like, I like the character. I like his personality. I like his backstory, all of it. He never made friends because he was too busy in Dalaran studying the arcane arts and, just whatever. But for whatever reason, I never play him. My other mage is named Mythic. Come on, that's the best mage name ever. So, but aside from that, I didn't touch Remix. I did do a couple of Last Hurrahs, but whatever. I did not do a single Mythic dungeon, even though it was the Mythic dungeon event, because quite honestly, I don't care at this point. Whatever I'm going to get, I've got. And I'll go through and look at the Transmog. I've got to buy the Jellycat mount as well. But aside from that, I'm pretty much done with Dragonflight. So I'm just ready for the War Within. So I'm gonna do some talking about the War Within, I think, over the next few weeks. Starting this week, we're going to talk about different aspects of the game and talk about different ways that. So we're going to talk about the lore of the War Within. We're going to talk about the Endgame play loop. That's what we're going to talk about today. And I want to talk about the raid because what I've seen so far of the raid is super exciting. And, I'm not a big raider. I do normal raids usually in pugs. Occasionally I'll do a heroic raid, but I've never finished heroic raid, not since Miss Pandaria, maybe. I think that was probably the last time I actually did a heroic raid at appropriate item level. So to me it's all academic, but I do want to talk about the raid. So we'll get into that later on down the road, and I do still want to do a kind of a recap of Remix and talk about what worked and what didn't work and all that. So, but those will be the episodes leading up to the launch of the War Within, and then I am trying to plan something special for the 50th episode, which will be the week of the launch of the War Within. So I'm probably going to do that on Monday, the 26th, and I'll put out a Twitter notification for that so that everyone's aware. But that's the plan right now. So we'll see. I don't know. Things could still change. So anyway, that's about it. So we do have a lot to talk about. So let's get into it.
It's time for the news.
In Blizzard news, so a couple things that I wanted to bring up today, and there's actually not a whole lot of Classic WoW news. The biggest news in Classic WoW is it's more community discussion than actual news items, but there's a lot of rumblings within the community right now, the Classic WoW community, about what a Classic Plus will look like and what that means for Season of Discovery and what it means for Cataclysm Classic. And I've been I have been kind of keeping an eye on the data for Classic just because I'm curious. I'm not trying to doomsay or promote or anything like that. I'm just curious to see what the numbers are for WoW Classic, because quite honestly, a healthy WoW Classic is better for the game. It's better for the game. It's better for everyone. But I don't have the numbers yet for this past week. So we're kind of in a waiting pattern for both Season of Discovery and Cataclysm. But the one thing that I wanted to mention is that there is a push right now by well-known World of Warcraft Classic community organizer Cargos, and I kind of chuckle because Cargos is one of those people that he's very polarizing. People, generally speaking, either really, really like him or they don't know who he is. Some people hate him. I feel like hate's a strong word. I don't particularly care for Cargos. It's whatever. But I don't follow him. I don't know, generally speaking, what he's up to. But in this case, I do know what he's up to because he is trying to compile a list of essentially demands to Blizzard. That is Blizzard, if you're going to do Classic Plus, here's the things that need to be in it. Which I think is comical because, come on, who are you? Mr. Streamer guy. And I get it. You know, he's not just a streamer. He's also an entrepreneur, a businessman. I do understand that. But I do think it's kind of funny that's kind of the approach that we're taking here. I do feel like Season of Discovery is going to run its course and wrap up, and then we'll see a short break, and then we'll get some sort of a Classic Plus. Because I feel like what the Blizzard developers didn't want to say in the most recent round of interviews that they did is that they are already developing Classic Plus, and they already know what's going to be in it, but they don't want to say anything because they know as soon as they say something, the community is going to jump down their throats. So just like the community did with the Molten Core 40-player versus 20-player issue. So if you're not aware, when Molten Core launched in Season of Discovery, it was supposed to be capped at 40 players. Supposed to be capped at 20 players. So like think Zul'Gurub in Classic. Well, when it launched, it was capped at 40 players, but it was tuned for 20 players. So players could go in there and beat the snot out of it. And everyone was happy. And then the development team came back and said, oh, well, this isn't supposed to be the case. And they changed it to be capped at 20. And now players are upset. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's they were doing it wrong. So, I mean, there was that. But aside from that, I mean, there's just really not a lot of news about Classic. It's mostly just guilds are progressing through Molten Core. They're going through the heat levels. They're fighting the Molten Core, the 11th secret boss, which looks like a giant flaming testicle. So, I mean, Classic, both Season of Discovery and Cataclysm, are kind of just trucking along. You know, you've got the Rise of the Zandalari in Cataclysm. Everything's going to kind of run on steam or run on momentum until we get to the Firelands in October. And honestly, what's going to end up happening is the population is just going to slowly decline until we get to Firelands. And then it will shoot back up, and then it will slowly decline until we get to Dragon Soul, and then it will go back up. I don't know if it's going to shoot back up. I mean, it might. Who knows? And then it will slowly decline until the end of Cataclysm. And this is what we expect. I mean, this is how WoW expansions have been for the past 20 years. The players who are actively playing the game slowly stop playing, and then suddenly a new expansion comes out and everybody comes back. And so that's basically the same thing that's happening with Season of Discovery and with Cataclysm. But you know, it's interesting to kind of look at it and go, Classic is thriving. And whatever Blizzard decide to do, whether it's Mists of Pandaria Classic, or if it's some sort of remix type thing, or if it's more seasonal servers, I don't know what they're going to do. But I do know one thing is that they're going to do something, because if they stop developing for Classic at this point, and when I say developing, I mean putting out the same content that they did 15 years ago. As soon as they stop doing that, those subscriptions are going to dry up. Players are going to go back to private servers, and they're going to stop paying Blizzard the $15 a month. And that'll be that. So Blizzard knows this, and so they're going to continue in some fashion creating Classic, even if there are people in the community who sit there and say, well, Mr. Pandaria is not Classic because the talents are different and everything is different and the gameplay is different. And yeah, you're right. But they're still going to do it and people are still going to play it. So I guess just hold on until we get until we get some sort of definitive word on Classic Plus, because it's really what the community wants, honestly. I could see a small contingent of players continuing to play Classic through Warlords of Draenor Classic. And then when Legion comes back, or when Legion comes out, everyone will come back. And then Battle for Azeroth Classic will come out, and then it'll drop off again. So, all right. Let's move on to modern World of Warcraft, because we do have quite a bit of news there. Let's start off with some of the more benign news before we get into the hot topic of the day. Okay, first off, there is a sale on the Blizzard store right now where you can save up to 50% on a colorful selection of pets. So if you are a pet collector and you're really dying to get some new pets, you can buy, let's see, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 pets. So, I mean, if that's your thing, great, go for it. Do that. You probably already have some of these, so that's why they're not giving a value, but you can get up to 50% off on this selection of pets. It's just one of the regular sales that they have going through the store. And I don't have a problem with this because honestly, lest we forget, Blizzard is here to make money. So let's not forget that that's why we are able to play World of Warcraft, just because Blizzard wants to make money. And Microsoft as well. So regardless of whether or not there's a union or if there's, if they're putting out games for free, whatever, they're going to want to make money. So if they can have a store where you're going to buy items, they'll do it. So, if you don't like this, then say so by not paying the money for the pets. If you really love pets in World of Warcraft, then I say go for it, because honestly, some of these are pretty cute. Okay. Speaking of things that are pretty cute, this is kind of an interesting one. This one actually kind of flew below the radar a little bit, but I spotted it on the Blue Tracker website, which is a great resource if you're trying to find out what's going on the forums, because honestly, the forums are kind of like a cesspool of nonsense and misinformation. So if you want a good way to get into the forums, the Blue Tracker is a great way to do that. Anyway, so this is the item appearance and transmog APIs. And I know that sounds like, what does that mean? I'll explain it. So basically what this means is, I'll read the announcement first. Loktar Agar, we are pleased to announce the newly added item appearance and character transmog collection APIs to the WoW community. Please use these endpoints to explore collected item and set appearances. And then they list out all the APIs that are usable. In addition, a new item.appearances property has been added to the item API with links to relative appearances. These endpoints are available in the static region and profile region namespaces, respectively. See the world work, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so an API is just it's a bit of code that you can use to access a database safely for the database owner. So normally, if you give somebody access to your database, then they can do things to it. Think like hacking, right? Even if it's read-only access, you can still do a lot of damage with read-only access to a database. So you create an API, which is basically just a set of instructions that say, here's the only way that this data can be accessed. And then they're giving it to the community. And basically what it is it's going to show you what transmog and appearance items you have on your account. So if you've ever wanted to be able to see, like on Wowhead, you can go to the dressing room and you can see how your character is going to look in certain transmog. Well, what's going to happen now is that you're going to be able to go on there and see how your character is going to look, and then it's going to tell you have 7 of these appearances already. You only need 2 more, or you have 2 of them, you need 7 more, or whatever. So this is a great tool for people who are collectors. Basically, it'll help you identify which raids you need to run. It'll help you identify, if you're missing quests, and if you're like, oh man, I'm missing Transmog and I just don't know where to get it, or I want to go do some Transmog runs, what's going to be the best use of my time? There will be tools that the community is going to create that will give you that information. Now, I can't tell you what those tools are going to look like because they just announced this. So the people who are going to build these tools, and I can't build these tools because that's way above my pay grade. I just don't know how to. I don't know how to do that sort of thing. But there are plenty of people who do. And so if you can think about like a website that'll show you which achievements you have or which mounts you have, this is the same thing. It's going to show you what appearances you have, and then you'll be able to track that, and you'll be able to create a collection list, and you'll be able to say, oh, wow, I need a ton of Battle for Azeroth appearances, or I need a ton of Warlords of Draenor appearances. Well, you can go run those raids then. Especially now with the warbands, you can just pick one character, run through there on that one character, and get as many appearances as you can. And then you can go back to your checklist and you can see what you're still missing. It's a great tool, or it's a potentially great tool for, I'm envisioning this tool that doesn't exist yet. It's a potentially great tool for collectors and for people who are completionists and just people who really like Transmog. So, which is most WoW players. So this is a huge thing. And honestly, I think it's because people don't understand how this sort of technology works, the back end development side of it. It's a little confusing. And honestly, I don't really know the specifics of it. I do understand on a general level how it works. But realistically, this is just going to be a way for collectors to keep track of what Transmog they have. So if that's something you're interested in, I would definitely keep an eye on your favorite community websites because they will no doubt be announcing some tools that will utilize these functions in the near future. So there you go. All right. Other WoW news. Now, I have made it a point to try to avoid going through beta changes and modifications and things like that. We are now in, as Doctor Strange would say, we're in the Endgame now. So I think it's okay to talk about this stuff and to kind of give some thoughts about the future. We still have over a month before Season 1 launches. And well over a month before we see any Mythic Plus action. But there was 2 Mythic Plus affix changes that they made on the beta. And I think really more than anything, it just shows that they are going through and kind of tweaking these knobs up and down just ever so slightly to make it work. So the 2 Xal'atath's Bargain affixes that were modified were Xal'atath's Bargain Oblivion. The Crystals of Oblivion now move towards the previously targeted location if all players are out of target. Or I'm sorry, if all players are out of combat. So that's the ones where it comes raining from the sky, and you have to interrupt them because if they get to the enemies, then the enemies will get buffed. But if you interrupt them or intercept them, then you will. And I think you just have to interact with the objects. Then you'll get the buff. The other one is Xal'atath's Bargain Devour. Devour does not prevent players from receiving healing, and Devour now inflicts 1% down from 2% maximum health every 1 second. Now, Devour is the new healing affix. And basically the way it works is it's very similar to Afflicted, except it's better. It's like Afflicted, but better. So Afflicted, the big problem with Afflicted was that you had to find the afflicted mob. Sometimes they were hidden behind something or around a corner, tucked in a little nook. You had to target them. You couldn't tab target them. You had to specifically target the afflicted mob. And then you had to either heal them or dispel them. This is no longer the case. So now what's going to happen is that players are going to get a debuff on them. And when that debuff is healed through or dispelled, then you'll get the buff. And if it doesn't happen, then the enemies will get the buff. So this is a really good way of handling this. So basically you can just do your normal, as a healer, you can just do your normal healing and you're gonna clear this. As long as there's healing to be done. Now, if there's no healing to be done and you're just struggling and you don't want this to continue to damage down your players, then you have to do something about it. But that's the interesting gameplay loop that they're creating. It's making something that you're already doing a little more challenging in the moment. And this is no doubt still going to see some more changes before it goes live. But I wanted to point it out because when this affix was announced last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, I saw a lot of people complaining, we just got rid of Afflicted, now we got it back. It's exactly the same. No, it is not exactly the same. As a matter of fact, and I'm going to read the exact the exact specifics of this. So what it says is, Xal'atath's bargain and devour. While in combat, Xal'atath tears open rifts that devour the essence of players. Okay, this is really basic. So what it does is it applies a health absorb shield to all players. This doesn't appear to scale with key level, deals 2% max health every second, can be dispelled by any dispel type, poison, curse, disease, or magic, lasts 15 seconds. If times out, heal all enemies. If it times out, it'll heal all enemies for a percentage of their maximum health. So basically, you have to get rid of the shield. And so you can do it with healing, you can do it with dispelling. So what this change that they just put in, and that's why this is important, this change that they just put in, it allows you to heal these players while they have the absorb shield on. So, it's I think it's still in the earliest stages of making sure this works, but I like this a lot better. I want to see it in action before I make a judgment on it. I feel like this is going to work a lot better, but I don't know. And this is going to go to the main topic of the day, which is the gameplay loop and how certain components of the game are for different types of players. So we'll get into that. There are a lot more changes that are specific to each of the individual dungeons, and those I'm not going to go over. A lot of the changes, though, that they did make, they reduced the timer on a lot of the dungeons. Necrotic Wake had its timer reduced. Miss of Tyrannus Scythe. Siege of Borealis had its timer reduced. And City of Threads and the Dawnbreaker. So, yeah, there was a bunch of the dungeons that had their timers reduced because apparently they were too easy to time. So Blizzard wants timing a dungeon to be a challenge. They don't want it to be an automatic unless you wipe. They want you to... The idea is, even if you go through there and you clear everything pretty well, you should still have to think as you're going through there. Make sure you're doing smart routes. Make sure you're pulling you don't have to pull 120% and you're fine. No, you have to actually think. You have to pay attention. You have to plan ahead, and that's what they're trying to do. So, but yeah, I'm not really keeping up on all of the Mythic Plus changes for exactly this reason, because it's like this can all change at a moment's notice. So there are still going to be changes that go in before the Mythic Plus season launches, but at this point, I think we're good leaving things where they are. All right. The big news for today that came out was the Xal'atath and Queen Ansarek video. So it's really the Queen Ansarek video, but Xal'atath was in it, so everyone got excited. So what was this video, you ask? Well, it details the beginnings of the relationship between Xal'atath and Queen Ansarek and why it is that the Nerubians are fighting for Xal'atath. So there was a couple of interesting components to this video. First off, we find out that the queen of the Nerubians, who is Queen Ansarek's mother, has been protecting the Nerubians for quite some time, even since the end of the Black Empire. The Black Empire sent an emissary to conscript the Nerubians to come fight for them. Queen Ansarek basically told them to piss off, killed the emissary, and then her people slowly declined over the next several thousand years. So her daughter, Queen Ansarek, seeing this, decided that she needed to take matters into her own hands. So she basically challenged her mother. And the mother was like, yeah, this isn't going to work. So Xal'atath, being the opportunist that she is, came in and offered to both of these women the opportunity to gain old god blood power to help them restore their society. Well, the wise queen, the mother, being the wise queen that she is, declined from Xal'atath. She said, no thanks. No thanks, babe. Ansarek, being the young upstart that she is, decided to go ahead and take Xal'atath's offer, kill her mother, and take power. Now, where have we seen a child kill their parent for power before?
What is this? What are you doing, my son?
Succeeding you, father.
Yeah, this should be fine. I see no problems with this. Just go ahead and follow in Prince Arthas' footsteps. Worked out so well for him. So, yeah, good job. Good job there. So, yeah, that's That's good stuff. The other thing that I thought was interesting, and this is a common theme in Warcraft lore and kind of the storytelling type of storytelling that they do. There's a theme about trading your freedom for power, which is, if you recall from the Rejection of the Gift cinematic in Legion, that's something that Illidan stated.
And embrace the light's power.
I've traded my freedom for power before.
So the Nerubians recognize that Xal'atath's bargain is bad for them, but it's the wisdom of many years of rulership versus the desire to do something for yourself that separates the two women in this video. So the mother, recognizing the danger with Xal'atath, declined the offer. The daughter, only seeing the power, went ahead and accepted. So this is a really interesting, and I wasn't even sure we were going to get animated videos from Blizzard this time around. This is a really interesting one, and I really like how they approach this. First of all, Xal'atath is much more of an interesting character in this still frame animated video than she has been in anything else, because she didn't just stand around and smirk. She's moving around almost like a spider. She's crawling on the wall. She actually came out of a portal on a horizontal or on a vertical wall and came out horizontally and crawled down the wall. Is it really interesting? And the animation in this was actually really good, because it's just still frames, but it's still frames that move together it's like an old flip book, right? If you remember the old flip books that they had back in the day, and you just flip through it and you could see your characters moving because you drew each frame slightly. So this is obviously a more slowed down version of that, but it gives the illusion of motion. It shows you the intent. It gives you a lot more information than just a picture would. But obviously less than a true animated video would. But yeah, Xal'atath is smiling. It shows her being manipulative. It's really interesting, and I personally think that Blizzard has done a great job of slowly building her up to create hype, instead of slapping us in the face with Nipple Boy as they did in Shadowlands, and we were all just kind of like, what? Who is this guy? And we were supposed to be impressed by the jailer. Oh my God, we're going to be impressed. No, they give us a villain who we have seen before and who just smirked at us. And we all went, oh. And then she said things that were mysterious, and we went, oh. And then she smirked at us again. And it's been this slow buildup of, okay, she obviously knows something. She's got some plan. She feels like she has the upper hand on us. And she went and kidnapped all of these community or WoW content creators last week. So obviously something's going on. And not just WoW content creators, other content creators who weren't doing WoW content at the time, which is really interesting. But if you haven't seen any of those videos, I would definitely go check them out. Just look for Xal'atath Kidnaps Content Creator on YouTube. Yeah, now with this video, we're getting a little bit more personality from Xal'atath. So she's more than just, oh my gosh, she's some undead blood elf that has some sort of plan, and she's got this mysterious dagger that she used to exist as, and now she's inhabiting the body of this blood elf, and what's going on. And we're going to get a lot more, I think, from Xal'atath. And I feel like maybe we're going to get her in the War Within as somewhere in between the Arthas showing up at every other quest line in the Wrath of the Lich King, and I don't know, maybe the way that Garrosh was handled in Mists of Pandaria. I think that was a good one, because we did get, even as Alliance players, you got a lot of Garrosh, but not so much that it was unbearable. And I didn't do the Horde campaign on Mists of Pandaria, so I can only speak from the Alliance side. So I want her there. I want to get more information about her. I want her to drive the story, but I don't need her to show up every quest and go, haha, I got you now, suckers. That's not necessary. I actually feel like that would really diminish it. So it's like, yeah, keep her at arm's length, but make sure that we feel the threat of Xal'atath, and that we know how serious it is. And I think we will. I think we're going to find that out very quickly in The War Within as it launches, and we're going to get in there. So, but yeah, so definitely check out this video. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's really good. The voice acting is great. The animation the drawings are really good. It's just, it's amazing how easy it is to tell a good story with good acting, a good script, and really basic animation. The drawings are good. They're really good. They show a lot, but there's not a lot of animation. It's just frame to frame. So, yeah, check it out. I think you'll be happy that you did. So, all right. All right. We're going to talk about one more thing. And I didn't include this in the WoW Classic segment of the news because it's really it involves WoW Classic, but it's more of the community news. So those of you who were on Twitter last week are familiar with this, but the great Josh Corbett from Countdown to Classic, among other podcasts, had a Twitter battle with many people. And this was about, so he had one of these interviews with the Classic development team, and Wowhead took the interview that was on YouTube, transcribed a good chunk of it, not the whole thing, but a fair amount, enough that you knew what was going on and didn't have to watch the video, and put an article about the interview, and then they linked to it on the on the Wowhead article. So, not the worst thing that ever happened, but certainly they're trying to profit more off of somebody else's interview work. And the people in the community who have said things like, oh, interviewing is not hard, the devs are doing all the work. Interviewing is incredibly hard. It's really difficult. If you've never done it, it's hard. So I would suggest trying to interview first. And maybe you're a natural at it, and maybe you'll say, oh, it's super easy for me. That's fine. But generally speaking, it's hard to do. And Josh is really good at it. He's excellent at interviews. He's done so many interviews over the years, and he's always nailed them. He's just really good. And he's a really good professional podcaster. I think he might have forgotten a few manners in his approach, because if you are familiar with Countdown to Classic, you will know that he does not shy away from using foul language. He does not shy away from calling people names. And I actually find it quite humorous. I really like his style, but he took that to Twitter and it was not well appreciated, and people got mad. And so when the entirety of Twitter is trying to call you out, and when I say the entirety of Twitter, I'm using air quotes, of course, because a lot of people were defending him wholesale. And a lot of people just said, hey, if you have a problem with Wowhead, you should just go talk to them directly instead of airing your laundry on Twitter or whatever. That's fine. But I think it was the manner. People didn't like the approach. And I have a problem with that because I feel like sometimes the delivery obscures the message. And I think that's what happened in this case. I think the delivery really obscured the message. He had a good message. I think he had a very valid point. And people just wouldn't listen to it because he, and pardon my language here, but he called them fuckwits. So he said, if you disagree with me, you're a fuckwit. That's not a way to win an argument. That might be a way to feel good about yourself or whatever, but that's fine. And I want to make it clear. I'm on Josh's side. I use Wowhead all the time. Okay, I'm not going to be hypocritical. I use Wowhead all the time. It's literally always open on my browser somewhere. I usually have 20 browser tabs open, and at least 2 of them are Wowhead. And I get a lot of my news from Wowhead. But I will take that news, and I will go back to the source of wherever it came from, whether it was Blizzard or Raider.io or somewhere else, and I will link to the source when I can. Sometimes the news source is Wowhead, and I will link to Wowhead. But generally speaking, I have tried very hard to go back to the direct source. So if it's a Blizzard post, I'll go back to Blizzard's website or whatever. In this case, I have to agree with Josh, but I do think that there's something to be said for we don't have a overall podcast community in World of Warcraft. We have a World of Warcraft Twitter community and a World of Warcraft YouTube community. And both of those exist simultaneously, and they are kind of their own. And there's a Twitch community as well. But there's no podcast community. There's nowhere that I'm going to go and hang out with Jason from the Starting Zone and Bob from Warcraft Reloaded and Josh from Countdown to Classic. That's not going to happen because there's no place where we're all hanging out. You know, where Dave Gagne from the Solo Queue and I could go get a beer, or Jen and I from Live Laugh Lore can go get a steak, right? You know, go to Berserker's house and have a barbecue. That's not happening. So I think that in the absence of that, Wowhead is really the only thing we have. And since Wowhead doesn't generally cover podcasts, it's really tough. So when they do cover a podcast, even if it's only the YouTube video of the podcast, I think it's something important that we need to recognize as a community, and we need to focus on generally increasing the overall awareness of podcasts in the World of Warcraft community. Because you know what? We all want to talk about the same thing, which is World of Warcraft, whether it's classic or modern or PvP or raiding or Mythic Plus or delves or world quests or playing by yourself or whatever. These things are all part of the same community, which is the World of Warcraft podcast community. And we don't actually have one. It's just more of an idea than an actual thing. So Wowhead is the best thing we have. And it sucks for podcasts. So I wish that Wowhead would cover more podcasts, because you know what? One of the comments that I saw a lot of on Twitter this past week was, well, I don't listen to podcasts because they're too long. And I know this all too well, because this is my 47th episode, and my wife, who plays World of Warcraft, mind you, has never listened to a single episode because they're too long. So yeah, there you go. That to me, that was it right there. I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. It's too long. I got it. So yeah, I understand that podcasts are long. I know my podcast is usually about an hour long, and there are weeks where I go a little bit longer. There are weeks I go a little bit shorter, but generally speaking, yeah, about an hour. And for some people, that's about 55 minutes too long. And I have thought about getting into the 5-minute YouTube video game, but honestly, I talk too much for that. You know, I'm sitting here rambling about Josh Corbett and his Countdown to Classic podcasts interview that he did with the devs, and the resulting Twitter backlash from calling out Wowhead. I'm still talking about it. So I guess what I'm saying is, I wish that there was a better way to have podcast news, because I'll tell you right now, one of the hardest things for me has been finding podcasts, because I listen to podcasts all the time, and I hate listening to the Joe Rogans of the world, or the, you know, whatever other podcast is out there. I like listening to World of Warcraft podcasts because that's what I'm interested in. Generally speaking, I used to listen to EVE Online podcasts and a couple of Marvel and Star Wars podcasts, but for the most part, I just stick with World of Warcraft. So anyway, I wish there was a better way to do it. I really do. Where somebody who could call out these interviews in a good and healthy way to promote the podcasts that are putting the work in to get those interviews. But sadly, we don't have that. So if Wowhead is all we get, then you've got to take what you can get, unless, you know, and I'll put it out there to Josh. If he ever hears this, Josh, you have had, I don't know if you still do, but you have a lot of pull in the podcast community, I think. And I would wager that if anybody could succeed at getting some sort of podcast community out there, it's you. So, you know what? Maybe that's your calling. Maybe that's what you need to be doing. So, all right, let's move on, because I've talked about this long enough, to our main topic of the week.
It's time for the main topic of the week.
Okay, so this isn't going to be a long, drawn-out main topic. I've rambled long enough in this episode anyway, but I wanted to kind of call attention to this because this is something that I've put a lot of thought into, and maybe I'm the only one that cares about this. I don't know. But I do kind of look at, going into Dragonflight was very different than going into the War Within. We have a completely new way of setting up our endgame in the War Within. Things are very different now. with the item upgrade system, with the way that Mythic dungeons and Heroic dungeons are scaled, with the whole crest system. I mean, there's a lot that has changed with items and updates in the War Within. So I wanted to talk about the idea of the gameplay loop in the War Within. So if you are a WoW player, you know that one of the things that you do when you play World of Warcraft is you accumulate gear, and that gear dictates how well your character can perform in their particular function, whether it's tanking, damage, or healing. Or support if you're an Aug Evoker, but we don't talk about them. So in this case, we're adding another gameplay kind of loop in with the addition of delves. So that's great. But what I wanted to talk about and what I wanted to kind of highlight here is the way that delves and the changes to the dungeon difficulty and Mythic Plus difficulty and the item upgrade system affect how we gain gear. So what I'm basically trying to get to is that this item upgrade system, and this is really difficult to do in an audio format, but I'm going to try my best. There are 6 upgrade tracks in World of Warcraft, as you may or may not be aware. Explorer, which is the lowest upgrade track. Then there's Adventurer, which is the next upgrade track. Veteran, Champion, Hero, and Myth. Now, the first 4 upgrade tracks, Explorer, Adventurer, Veteran, and Champion, they have 8 levels of upgrades per track. So if you get a piece of gear, it will say Veteran 1 of 8, or Adventurer 3 of 8, or whatever. And so that means that you're on the 3rd upgrade of that piece of gear, and so you can upgrade it 5 more times. And this is important because this shows us what it is that we can do as far as upgrading our gear goes. So I think the best way to explain this is to give examples with the current Dragonflight system and draw that comparison to the new War Within system, so that, if I say, 577, you're not going to know what that means. But if I say the highest you can go without getting worm crests is 502, well, there you go. Now you understand, because you know what 502 means. You might have a character that's at least 502, and that's great. But if you don't, or if you're not familiar, if you don't understand what I'm saying, essentially every 4 upgrades, you use a different type of crest, and you get those crests from different types of content. So for example, if you are in the first upgrade system of the veteran track, you're going to use whelpling crests. You'll get those from Raid Finder, looking for raid. You're going to get those from doing some world quests. You're going to get those from doing opening treasure boxes out in the world, or maybe picking up an item from the Super Bloom, or getting a small reward during the Researchers Under Fire, things like that. So that's your whelpling crests. Those are going to be called weathered crests in the War Within, but that's not important. What's important is that using whelpling crests, you can only upgrade your gear to item level 489. Okay. If you move on to the Drake crests, you're going to get Drake crests from normal raid. You're going to get Drake crests from Mythic 0 dungeons, and you're going to get Drake crests from whatever the public event, the highlighted public event for the week is. So whatever the last hurrah will tell you. So it's in season 4 right now. Since we're in the pre-patch season, all of the last hurrah items, whether they're active or not, are giving you Drake crests. So that's your Centaur Hunt, your feast, your Tuskar Feast, your Siege on Dragonbait Keep, your Researchers Under Fire, your Fusion Camp, your Time Rifts, your Super Bloom, your Dream Seeds, and your Dream Surge. Those all give you Drake crests, and Drake crests will upgrade your gear to item level 502. So theoretically, by just doing outdoor world content, you can upgrade your gear to 502. Okay, so if you have your character who is item level 483, and you're like, man, I want better gear, you can do better gear without having to run a bunch of dungeons. It might take you a while, but you can do it. And so these are the gameplay loops that I'm talking about. And it's the reason that I wanted to bring this up is because in the War Within, it's going to get more specific. Because right now, we don't have delves. And putting delves into the mix is really going to change up how this gameplay loop works and how it feels, honestly. So let's go through how these are going to be divided and what the best way to get the gear for your particular gameplay loop is what the best way to do that is going to be. So, all right. First off, let's talk about crests. So if you do a heroic dungeon right now, you're going to get a weathered crest in the War Within. If you're doing it in Dragonflight, you're going to get a whelpling crest. But in the War Within, you're going to get a weathered harbinger crest. Okay, so just make that connection in your mind. Weathered and whelpling are basically the same thing. Okay. If you're doing Mythic Zeros, if you're doing whatever your high-level world public event is, or if you're doing normal raid, you're going to be getting carved crests, which are the same as Drake crests. So make that connection in your mind. Carved equals Drake. Okay. And then if you're doing higher level content, Mythic Plus, if you're doing heroic raid, you're going to be getting runed crests. These are the same as worm crests. And then if you're doing Mythic raid or plus 10, I think it's plus 9 and above actually, Mythic Plus, you're going to get gilded crests, which are the same as aspect crests. Now, I know this is a lot of words, and I do have a graphic that I will put on Twitter. I hope I don't get shouted down for it, but I'll put it on Twitter, and I'll try and put the link in the show notes. But the long and the short of it is, if your gameplay loop involves primarily running heroic dungeons and doing tier 4, 5, 6 delves, you're going to be getting weathered crests. And that's going to put your gameplay loop at 593 item level is your max upgrade. Now, of course, you're going to be able to get some carved crests from doing the occasional public event. Maybe you'll pop into normal raid a little bit. Maybe you'll do a few bosses on a pug. Maybe you'll knock out a mythic dungeon or two during the week. You'll get a few carved crests. But for the most part, that's where your gameplay loop is going to end. You're going to get about 593, maybe a little bit higher than that, but that's the maximum that you can upgrade that gear. That's Veteran 4 of 8. That's Adventurer 8 of 8. That's it. It's as high as you can go. To put it into comparison for Dragonflight Season 4, that's item level 489. Okay. If you are doing a little bit more Mythic Zero dungeons, you're getting more carved crests, maybe you do some more normal raid, maybe you're focusing on the higher level delves, the 7s, the 8s. You're going to get those carved crests, which are equivalent to Drake crests, and that's going to take you to item level 606, or to put it into Dragonflight terms, that's item level 502. So again, that's where you're going to max out. So if that's your gameplay loop, if you feel like, hey, I'm not going to do Mythic Plus because it's too hard, then you're going to max out at carved crests. If you are looking at all of this and you think that's for losers, I want to get the best gear. I want to get the best gear that I can. Okay, so if you're doing Mythic Plus 4 and above, okay, if you do 2 or 3, you're still getting carved crests. If you do 4 and above, you'll get the runed crests, which are the same as worm crests currently. That will take you up to item level 619, which is equivalent to Dragonflight Season 4, item level 515. So basically what it boils down to is if you want to get into the high 600, move up that 600 ladder, you're going to need those high level crests. And that means you're going to be doing Mythic Dungeons 4 and above, and you're going to be doing Heroic Raid. That's really the only way to earn those crests. You can get them through other means, of course. You can get them from the Great Vault. You can get them by maxing out your item level and eliminating the usage of the previous level of crest, and then you can use those as an upgrade. Yeah, you can do all that. But generally speaking, those are going to be a rarity, not your normal everyday crests that you're going to be getting. Okay. And then, of course, the high-level players, the players who are running Mythic Plus 9s and above, the players who are running Mythic Raid, yeah, you're going to get the Gilded Crests, and you're going to go up to 639. and those are the same as aspect crests now. And there's going to be a sizable number of players who will never get a gilded crest because they might be able to do a mythic plus 5 or 6, but trying to get into a 9 is going to be really difficult. And so, yeah, maybe you'll get one, or maybe you'll get 10 gilded crests because you were able to complete one mythic 9 or one mythic 10, and that's fine. But you don't need to. The reason to get that gear is so that you could do better at mythic dungeons or high level mythic dungeons and mythic raid. If you're not earning gilded crests, then you don't need them. And I know that doesn't make sense, and maybe it's counterintuitive, but really the people who are earning them on a regular basis, those are the people who need them to upgrade that gear, because if they don't have item level 639, they can't get invites to anything. And there's been a lot of discussion about that in particular, is that a lot of these players are only going to be able to upgrade one item per week, which is fine, because if you're only playing Mythic Plus, you're only going to get one item per week. But, it's tough. If you're trying to upgrade every single slot that you have with crests, that's a lot of crests. And it's going to take you weeks, months to upgrade all that gear. And that's for one character. If you have 3 alts, that's a lot of dungeons. Okay, so the long and the short of it is, this new upgrade system is good because it helps give you an idea of what your goal should be. I know for my current play style, which is some low level Mythic Plus and some normal raid, that item level 502 is kind of my max. Now I have 2 characters who are 507 right now because I've gotten some worm crests on them, and that's great. But for the most part, that's not happening for me because I'm not that high up. So, am I gonna increase my gameplay or my end game band? Maybe not. But it's important to know what your cap is, or what your limit is, or what your target should be for that. Because if you see players running around with gear that's 20 item levels above you, and you feel bad, just remember, these players are running high level content. And if that's something that you want to do, if something you want to strive for, great, go for it. And you should do it, because honestly, it's a lot of fun doing high level Mythic Plus. But if you're happy with your gameplay loop, but you're sad about your gear, just understand what your limits are on your gear, and you'll be fine. Because really, that's really what it boils down to, is you're only going to be able to get the gear that you're going to be able to do the content for. Anything above that, yeah, it might make it easier for you to do world quests, but is it necessary? No, it's not necessary. You don't need item level 522 currently to run heroic dungeons. That's overkill. So you could do that with 480 gear, and it's fine. So my point is, understand where these caps are, and what your caps on your upgrades are, and be satisfied with that. Because honestly, with delves in the mix, it really changes a lot of it. It gives a lot more opportunities to run some of these, or to earn some of these currencies that we really struggled with before. It was really hard to get Drake crests consistently. Like, you could do the world quests or the public events and do some Mythic Zeros, but if you did all the Mythic Zeros and did all your world quests and you still needed more Drake crests, you were screwed. So anyway, this is not really earth-shattering or anything. I just, it's something that I've been thinking a lot about, and something that I wanted to talk about, because I feel like it's really important to know going into the expansion what to expect, at least for me. And I wanted to know, what should I be expecting as far as gear goes? And if I want a higher level of gear, what is the content that I'm going to need to focus on in order to get there? So if that's what's important to me, then that's what I need to look at. So if I want those runed crests, if I want to be able to get to item level 619, I need to look at mid-level mythic dungeons, 4, 5, 6, 7s, and tier 8 delves. So, all right. Anyway, that's enough numbers and all that. I know that this was a little dense, but it's the type of thing that we need to discuss and we need to talk about, because you know what? Honestly, nobody really talks about this. People just go out there and they say, well, if you're not this item level, then you can't, you're bad or whatever. And it's, there's different item levels for different people. And I think it's really important to understand that there are many different people who play this game in many different ways. And just because you're running high level Mythic Plus doesn't mean that everybody else is going to be doing the same thing. or everyone else should be doing the same thing. That's not necessarily true. So, all right, that's going to wrap up our show for this week. Thank you so much for listening. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to get on this microphone and speak to you. If you want to get a hold of me directly, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I am at Denethar, or you can email me. I'm denethar1@gmail.com. If you want to email the show, you can email us at azerothunitedpod@gmail.com. Also, you can check out the show's link tree. That's linktr.ee/AzerothUnited. And you're going to find the links there to the Discord, where we've got lots of conversations going on, the Azeroth United Twitter account, Azeroth United email, and the YouTube channel and all that. So I'll also have that link in the show notes, so you can click on that, and it'll just take you directly to all of those things. All right. Thank you again for listening. Remember to be good to each other out there. Don't judge another player's gameplay loop. It's their personal choice, and it's okay. And everyone can do their own thing. So just remember, that is a real person on the other side of the keyboard. So be nice, smile, and have fun. All right. Take care. I love you all, and I'll see you in Azeroth.